Hey folks, Jimmy here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new issue of Warhammer 40k Imperium magazine. Now, as per usual, if you like these videos, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course, drop a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys and it goes an absolute massive way to help the channel too. Now, this week we're on issue 27 of Imperium magazine and we get our first Hemiotrope reactor. A fairly basic scenery kit, but something more scenery as well, which is pretty decent. It's always good to have more scenery. Very easy. You will notice all these little different valves and gauges and everything like that over it, so you have got little tiny bits of detail to paint, but otherwise you can get something really nice looking and that can kind of semi stand out from the crowd if you want it to, or if you want it to blend in the background because it is scenery. You can also do that as well. But otherwise, the idea is that you get two of them together later on and you can kind of mix and match and have a bit of fun with it. Into the magazine itself, we actually get the Hemiotrope reactor. So the Hemiotrope reactor is the heart of the Imperial war machine. Hemiotrope reactors are power generators found in almost every Imperial industrial centre, and they crackle with energy as they fuel the endless war effort. In battle, cunning soldiers may dare to use the Hemiotrope reactor's energy field to shield themselves from harm. So, a Hemiotrope reactor can be broken down into several parts, really. So there is the intake valve, which is just down here, and it can be essentially just a small hatch on the end of a pipe. You have your centrifugal core, and you have the cog mechanicus, which is the emblem emblazoned on the front with several gauges on the inside of it, which is to remind everybody that the operators of the Hemiotrope reactors are the Adeptus Mechanicus and they are mighty. Now, pretty cool stuff. You can also do a battle record for them as well. We'll get rules later on, so you will actually find out exactly what it means by wounds ignored on a later issue, probably when we get the second one, obviously. You can give it a binary designation, which is just numbers, so it's a numerical kind of name, essentially, for the reactor. How you're going to tell it apart from the other reactor that you get, entirely up to you. You can also choose what it powers as well. So, for instance, you can have it powering, fueling a manufacturer and producing bolter shells. It could be powering an orbital weapons platform. Or it could be doing something completely unknown to everybody, but there are obviously going to be dire warning signs all over not to deactivate it, so who knows. So we could have a bit of a mystery on their hands if you wanted to, but yeah, really good stuff. Or if you wanted to leave it to chance, roll a d6 and have a bit of fun. Then we get our information about the battle line troops for Space Marines. So the heart of any Space Marine force is its battle line squads. The strength of these units is their flexibility in battle. They can be called upon to perform any task that is required of them, whether holding a crucial objective, providing fire support, or charging to meet enemy head-on in close combat. Now, with the battle line troops, we've obviously had some already. These are your core infantry. So, for core infantry, we of course have the intercessor squads, which we already have, and we've already had some before, and yeah, pretty standard. So, these are your kind of your bulk unit, so we'll have plenty of them to go through later on at some point, I'm sure. You do have heavy intercessor squads as well, which wear heavier armour. They wear the Gravis armour, which is thicker and bulkier than the plate worn by other Space Marines, which allows them to kind of take an objective also while sustaining heavy enemy attacks as well, and kind of just shrugging it off like there's nothing to it. They also generally carry a slightly heavier bolter as well, which can cut down enemy foes, even heavily armoured foes if needed. And then there are the infiltrator squads as well, which generally wear one of the lightest armours of all Space Marines. And these are kind of just designed to get in behind the enemy ranks, disrupt everything. So they have equipment that can break down the communication of enemies and scramble their communications if needed, and they generally will carry smaller weapons and sometimes even sniper rifles, which are pretty cool as well. It also mentions the fact that there is the Astra Militarum. So the Astra Militarum is your bog standard human. So these are not genetically enhanced, they are sent out into the world, they are your average army. Pretty good, they have some really cool looking units as well to go with it, so some really good stuff in that kit range, in all honesty. I do kind of like them, they're quite fun. They're just a bit smaller than Space Marines, which isn't always a bad thing, because it does mean they generally have a lower points tally, so you can have more of them to do a bit more damage if needed. Then we get more history of the Imperium. So we get the ages of mankind. So the darkness before the Imperium. The Imperium was not created overnight. It was born from the long dark millennia of mankind's history. What began as a hopeful voyage into the stars ended in misery, with humanity's greatest inventions lost or corrupted. So this is breaking down essentially the history of the Imperium. So there is the Age of Terror, which is M1 to M15, so where there is generally next to nothing known about humanity, how humanity first became a spacefaring civilization. Records indicate that sometime between M1 and M15 humanity made several great leaps, developing space travel and becoming a hub of intergalactic society. So M1 to M15 is essentially, if you wanted to put it in real world terms, is now. Is this kind of period where we're living now. So we don't have interstellar travel in reality. We can travel into space, but we've generally only been as far as the moon, and that is it, unless you're a conspiracy theorist. But yeah, so we've travelled to the moon, not much else. There are obviously plans and pipe dreams to travel to Mars from many different companies, including Elon Musk's SpaceX and some other places. Whether it'll happen, whether it'll start a great revolution space travel race, who knows. It could be a long way off, but essentially this is where we are at now in human history. The age of technology though came about in M15 to M25. So it was around M15 that humanity first began to develop warp travel, and this was key to mankind's rapid expansion. The navigator gene, a rare mutation that allows humans to see through the tides of warp, was cultivated, with navigator houses formed to train and raise new generations of more powerful warp guides. This allowed humanity to expand further than ever before, leading to the rise of new challenges and new opportunities. So, when warp travel was first kind of came to being in the history of mankind, of course mankind spread like we generally would. So we colonised many different planets, travelled further and further, and went across everything. So eventually there was an apocalyptic catastrophe that of course changed a lot of stuff, and some star systems were scoured of all life, and the psychic awakening of humanity was seemingly the reason. Some psychers claimed godhood, while others committed horrific atrocities. A lot of this generally because of the psychers being connected to the warp, and the warp being essentially the realm of chaos, and yeah, it changed a lot of things in all honesty. Then we had the Age of Strife, which was M25 to M30. So the Age of Strife was a nightmare for mankind. Warp storms separated humanity's worlds, condemning each of their own to their own personal hell. Records of this time are hard to separate from the rambling prophecies of doom. So around this time, the Emperor kind of came to being and cast down all the rivals that he had for the throne of terror, and it is essentially when chaos started to rear its ugly head and cause a lot of havoc and devastation for pretty much everyone. So, bad times. M31 though is very different, and it is the start of a big story in the world, in the kind of the universe of Warhammer 40k. So, seeking to unify not just terror but rather all of humanity's lost domains, the Emperor gathered his forces and launched the Great Crusade, the mightiest military campaign in history. where vast fleets departed Terra with Space Marine legions at their heads, sweeping away all resistance before them. So, the Space Marines were of course created by the Emperor, and he utilised them in a very, very unique way. So they are of course led by the Primarchs, and who are essentially the Emperor's children, and they kind of pushed their way through and kind of regained a lot of ground before essentially what happened was the Emperor's favoured son, Horus, of the Lunar Wolves Legion, turned on good old the Emperor, and then as humanity had stood upon the brink of triumph, he kind of fell to the dark gods and changed the Empire forever, really. So Horus led half of his Primarch brothers into damnation alongside him, and plunged the Imperium into the worst civil war mankind had ever known, and eventually the Emperor was kind of defeated, but also he managed to kill Horus at the same time. So the Emperor has kind of been confined to the Golden Throne, which is kind of keeping him kind of alive in a way, and yeah, it's never been the same ever since. So it is what it is. If you like Horus Heresy, there are some really, really great books, and you can get a lot more information about it. I'm not going to go into it because I'm not that clued up on it, in all honesty. I'll be quite blunt about it. I generally know little tidbits, but there are probably more well-versed people who know a lot more. Then you got your How to Build guide, the Hemiotrope reactor. Very, very easy. You're not going to have a problem with it. Just clean it up, quite nice, and you can't go wrong. Entirely up to you if you want to stick that pipe to the end of your Hemiotrope reactor, or if you want to leave it and do it later on, or just utilize it so you can connect other pipes to it later on, because I think we do get some other pipes later on, so it could be entirely up to you how you want to go about doing it. Then your How to Paint guide, paint it how you want, in all honesty. You can follow that guide. It's a fairly simple guide. I don't agree with having red pipes personally. I think metal pipes look far better because you can make them look slightly more corroded, but otherwise it's not a bad kind of paint scheme. It works. That's the main thing. That's what you're going to want out of it. But yeah, not too bad. Then you've got more rules and references for the tutorial section, all about your movement phase, your psychic phase, shooting phase, and pretty much everything else. This is going far more in depth with your actual playthroughs, so this is going to be very, very handy for later on. So majority of the battle plans that you'll get at later points in the magazine are of course going to reduce the amount of kind of hand holding it's going to give you for your playthroughs, so you can get a lot more out of it, and you are going to need some details from here. We've already been given the basics for a lot of stuff, so you can get through it with this. This is essentially your core rules section, and is essentially the core rules book. You're not going to have a problem with it, in all honesty. Then we have our playthrough, which is a power struggle, literally fighting over the reactor. So you've got to capture the reactor. You have your Necron force and you have your Imperium force. On the side of the Necrons, you have your Technomancer and 3 Canoptech Scarab Swarms and 5 Immortals. On the inside of the Imperium, we have our Tech Priest Dominus from last week's issue and 5 Assault Intercessors. And it is just literally hold the objective. For every turn that you hold the objective, which is the reactor, you'll get 1 point. The most victory points at the end of 5 rounds is the winner. Job done. And then next week we get Necron Warriors. So 28 and 29 we get Necron Warriors in both issues. So we get 10 more Necron Warriors and we get 3 more Scarab Swarms. Hopefully the good old sprues are correct this time, and they don't make the mistake that they made last time where they sent out duplicate sprues in both issues. Who knows? Fingers crossed for them. Hopefully they get it right. But otherwise, yeah, it's bulking out your Necron army. Pretty good. Right, that's it from me. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I shall catch you very, very soon. Bye bye now.